Okay, we can get going here. I'm sure we'll get some more people join us later on as we go on. Good morning, everyone. Jeff Krieger with the executive director of the Association of Townships. Thank you all for joining us. I do want to start out saying I apologize for not being here the last couple of Township Tuesdays, but for whatever reason, my schedule did not work well for attending these things. So I do hope to rectify that in the future and be here for as many as I can. Since I have not talked to you yet since the annual conference, I do want to talk about that a little bit. I hope that some of you, hopefully all of you, I doubt that, but I hopefully some of you were able to get a chance to be there and attend that, to see the training that we had going on and all the events that were going on there. I thought it was a great event. People who did show up really enjoyed it. I thought that it was worthwhile and so forth. We had about 200 people, so we're definitely light on our numbers. And but I do also know that during October, during the harvest, that was not a very conducive time for a lot of folks. And the board took that into consideration. And just want to let you know, if you want to get your pens and paper out, that the next annual conference for 2023 will be December 7th through December 9th. So that'll get us obviously right between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It'll get us past harvest, hopefully, get us past hunting up in the north. And obviously we will have to contend with potential snowstorm. But in the view of history, when I looked at our math history, and when we've had our annual conferences back in the 70s and 80s, it was always in December. I should say always, but from what I read and what I saw, we had a lot of annual conferences that were in December. And especially now with global warming, well, I can't really say that today because it is snowing outside my window right now. But I know there are a lot of years that we've been praying for a white Christmas, and just because whatever the reason for it, we weren't getting much snow, and so hopefully we get a good weather and it's not going to interfere with that. But again, the annual conference was a success for those who did show up, and hopefully we'll have more people showing up next year for those events as well. We do plan on having a Thursday night like networking event, which we've had in the past. We didn't have that this year, but next year we do plan on having a Thursday night. So if you want to drive in early and just be able to see your fellow township officers, go with the vendors, see what they have to say, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Diane. Location of 2023 meeting will be at the River Center in St. Cloud. And in fact, the next 2 years, 23 and 24, we already have 24 set up as well, will be in St. Cloud at the River Center. It's a good central location. Their venue it really works out well for us, being right there in St. Cloud. I know those of you who might be on the outskirts, I know that it might be a little bit of a jaunt, but for the majority of people, it definitely is going to be very conducive for that. And maybe later on, the board will decide to move it around again, but we'll have to. But for the next 2 years, it will be in St. Cloud, and I can tell you. Well, won't worry about that. I think the second in 2024, it'll be that first weekend in December as well. So anyways, going on, the election, obviously we just had, those of you who had a November election, if your term was up and you were running for your seat, since you're on this call, I assume you won. So congratulations if that were the case. And but I'm sure there's been a lot of changes at our legislature, and this kind of moves me into our legislative agenda. There are, if I remember right, I believe there are like 56, 57 new faces that we are now going to see at the legislature. People who have never held office before, so that's going to be 25% of our entire legislature are brand new. And so there's a lot of people we have to educate. So I'm going to be calling on you as township officers. And when you're on this call, you are much more proactive than a lot of other township officers are out there in the state of Minnesota. One, I congratulate you on that, but two, I want to challenge you also, in that we need to be speaking to our legislators, especially these new ones. I mean, speak to all of them, but especially these new ones. We need to educate them on what townships are. Even the veteran ones, they don't know much about us. We need to tell them how we do government. and why what we do is important in the overall scheme of all government for our state. Is that we do it well, and we need to be able to preserve that. And there are a few things that, just say more than a few, that we want to talk to them about. One, obviously, is transportation funding. We need to get that done. Last year, there was a consensus, at least, that came down to 6% of the auto parts and repair sales tax that was going to come to township, 6% to small cities. That would be in addition to our gas tax that we already get. In 2022, the amount of gas tax that we're getting this year is about $52 million, just shy of that. I will tell you, I was at a Transportation Alliance at their annual conference, which I did present at last week, Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever that was. And I talked to them about townships, how we do what we do in our legislative agenda and so forth. But I did find out that we are expecting a 7% drop in 2023 from our 2022 numbers. So instead of $52 million in gas tax, they're expecting about $48 million going to townships next year. So that's a $4 million shortfall. And so, which again is even more reason why we need to ramp up this auto parts and repair sales tax. And just so you know, I mean, we will come out with our legislative agenda as we've always done, our one-page report, so forth, that you can take along, and when you talk to legislators, refer to it. But we will be talking about wanting 15%. That's 15% of the auto parts and repairs sales tax going to townships, and dedicated ongoing funding that'd be in addition to the gas tax. And so in 2021 numbers, you're looking at about $41 to $42 million that would be added to our coffers if that were to actually go through. And I told it to the Transportation Alliance. We had MnDOT people that were there, and people from a cross section of Minnesota in their different transportation capacities. And yeah, I mean, it's a big number, for what we're used to, but we're used to getting pittance and little crumbs here and there, and we need to take a bigger swing and a bigger bite of this apple, and because we are being left behind. And as I mentioned, Transportation Alliance, I know I've mentioned on this call before too, but I'll say it again, it's because it is worth repeating. I did go to a board meeting in this for our national federation in Door County for the Towns and Township Association, and there the Secretary of Transportation for Wisconsin was speaking, and what they are doing for town roads in Wisconsin, and they have 60,000 miles of roads. We have 55,000 miles of roads. They're getting $168 million. That's $168 million in 2022. And that is ongoing dedicated funding. And I questioned him on that to make sure that those were the words that they have. And yes, is ongoing dedicated funding. We're getting less than a third of what that is. Not that we need to meet what they're doing, but it just shows that our legislature needs to show more of a commitment to our infrastructure, because our roads are not getting any better, and because of the lack of funding. Anyways, I'll get off that soapbox, although it is an important soapbox. Annexation. Steve and I are going to be having, we have had meetings with the League of Minnesota Cities, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, and the Small Cities Coalition, talking about annexation. The thing that we're trying to drive this down into a narrative that's easy to explain and easy for legislators, especially new ones, to understand what our purpose is and where our biggest, should say biggest concerns or hurdle, but just one that we want to correct, and that is the tax or the annexation of land where no development is taking place. Too much of that's going on. Or a city's going to annex land that they're going to be developing 10, 15 years from now. There's no reason for them to have that land now. When we do early annexation, they can already secure the land, and knowing that it's going to be there for future development. But the townships can still garner the tax dollars from that until it actually goes into development where they need city services. But if that land is not going to get city services, why in the heck are they going into the city? There's no reason for it. I got off the phone yesterday with somebody. I won't say where, it doesn't matter. But their nearby city had been annexing land, And part of it was a 200-acre farm. It's in that area, 200 acres or so. And it never developed. And currently there are 0 plans for development. And that's still an active and working farm that's now right in the city. And in fact, they even made a new zoning for this parcel where they're taxing them at township rates, but they're still in the city. Township's not getting any of those dollars. Why is that? Absolutely no reason for that. And that's the main thing I think that we want to try and rectify. If we can rectify that and make that basically a big no-no that cannot happen, I think it's going to help cure a lot of the other ills and woes that we have with other features of annexation, being the 60-40 rule and so forth. It all has to, well, first start with landowner rights. Does the landowner actually want to go into the city? But 2, is there going to be development that's actually going to take place on that property? And if you can say no to either one of those, I don't believe they should go into the city. And so those are things that we're fighting after that. Payments is another one. Payment in lieu of taxes. A lot of this is more up north, where you have a lot of state land and so forth. But there's still roads that are going by the state land, and that the townships have to pay for and maintain. Costs a lot of money, as you all know, and so they need to pony it. They mean the state or DNR or whoever is going to be responsible for that. They should be the ones that should be paying for those roads and keeping up with those payments and increasing it so that townships have enough resources to actually do it properly. And to me, that just makes sense and it's fair. That's the biggest thing. We just want fairness. That's the last or the biggest things that I wanted to present today. And I am open to any questions that you may have, but I'll kind of interject that as we go. I'll first check to see if there's any questions. Oh, we're supposed to be shut off for repairs in the area. Oh, okay. All right, no questions at this time. So I'm going to pass it off to Steve. Steve, if you have anything, and but feel free to put your questions in the chat and I'll answer it as I can. Thank you.
Okay. Hey everybody, I have a couple things to talk about, a couple of requests, a third request actually too that I just thought of. One of them is related to clerks and treasurers and what happens when you lose a clerk or a treasurer. Does that person, do you appoint? What happens to the deputy? Can you appoint from within the township, outside the township? What about having people share deputy duties, all that kind of stuff. So this is a common issue, one that comes up really quite a bit. There are what I look at as a long-term solutions and short-term solutions. Okay. When you have a vacancy, the town board still has to do something. They have to fill that vacancy. So the first thing to consider is that office one that is usually elected, or is it always appointed? So when I say always appointed, that means at some point in the past, the voters adopted what's called option B government. And so it was a ballot question, and they would have said, we don't want to have an elected clerk and or treasurer anymore. We're going to have that person be appointed, meaning they're like an employee. That can happen for a variety of reasons. Okay, but it matters for the appointment which one we're dealing with. Because if we're dealing with an elected official, by law, that person that holds the office must be a resident of the township who is 21 years of age or older and eligible to vote, because the nature of the office is still the same. So even though they're not being elected into it, we still have to put somebody in who is eligible to be elected in the first place. So a lot of townships are in that position. Their clerk and or their treasurer are still elected. And when you go to find someone new, you have to find someone 21 years of age, a town resident, eligible to vote. And then that person can be appointed. That's not always easy. Sometimes you get into positions where it's hard to find someone and you kind of beg, and we end up with spouses being on the board because they just need somebody. And so it's, honey, can you do this for us? Yeah, sure. But that person doesn't always want to do the job long term. So this is where you get into some of the issues of short term, long term. Okay. And I'll get back to the option B thing here. when you're elected, you're just slotted into this. You just have no choice but to get somebody who is a resident. When you're not in an elected position, you're in that option B situation. Now the township has more flexibility. They can hire someone from outside the township. It does not have to be someone 21 years of age or older. They don't even have to be eligible to vote. Although if they're not, it begs the question of credibility and whether they should be hired. Okay, but that's one of the reasons that many towns adopt option B, is they cannot find someone in the township to hold the office, or someone who will commit to holding the office in the long term. So let's say your township has an elected clerk or treasurer and there's a vacancy. Well, the township supervisors come together as the appointment committee. It has to be in an open meeting, posted, open to the public, all that. You can put up application or advertisements for applications if you want, and receive applications back. Remember, you can't close a meeting for any part of any of this. So if you do interviews, they got to be in an open meeting. If you do any discussion about applicants, it's in an open meeting, which can be uncomfortable. If you already have someone in mind, well, then you appoint that person. You don't have to advertise for anything. If your problem ends there, great, good for you. But oftentimes it doesn't, because that person doesn't want to stay for a long time. So this is where we get into the short term, long term. In the short term, you hire you appoint that person who's eligible to vote, with the understanding that you're going to get them out of that position. And you do that in a couple of ways. The first is the use of a deputy. A deputy does not have to be a resident, does not have to be eligible to vote, any of that. It can be anyone hired. It's an employee effectively, but it's appointed by the clerk or the treasurer, because that's their deputy. The board role is to decide, are they paid and on what terms? And we strongly recommend you pay them, and that they're given training and fair pay so that they can actually help. And in some cases, you maybe find a clerk from a neighboring township or supervisor from a neighboring township, and they're going to be your deputy. And the arrangement is the deputy actually will do all of the work, because they may know how to do it or be interested in it. So you have the appointed person who's kind of a figurehead in the short term, and then you have the person appointed as a deputy to do the work. That's the short-term solution. Okay. In the longer term, if you can't find somebody in the township and you're in that elected position, well, then we may want to look at option B, which is you pose the question to the voters. And this is the board of supervisors can just choose to pose the question on the ballot, and the voters decide, are we going to go to a appointed clerk or treasurer? And you can do both, or you can do one. Okay. Well, if the question passes, it's effective once the position is open. So if it couldn't be like middle of the term, then you say, clerk, you've been appointed here, but now you're done, or you were elected and you have one more year on your term and you're done today. It wouldn't work that way. Elected people get to fill out their term. Okay, but appointed, if you're in this situation, that person you appointed in the short term, well, they only lasted until the next election anyway. So their term would be coming to an end when the ballot question is passed. So the timing works out a little bit better that way. And let's say it passes. Now your board can hire a full-time clerk or treasurer. I'm sorry, part-time. What I mean is long-term clerk or treasurer from within or outside the township. And you have much more flexibility in hiring. Again, board decision on whether to pose the question, it can certainly be political with the voters who may decide, well, wait a minute, I want to vote for that person. I want that person to be answerable to me and not capable of just being fired by the board. So, but when you get in that situation of nobody wants the job, it's pretty hard for voters to come in and say, well, we want to vote for someone. And you say, well, then put your name on the ballot. And they may not do that. So those are the options I think that you have, and we do have a guide on this. It is in the general information section of the library. It's a pretty robust document. There's quite a bit of information in there about different optional forms of government. One of them is option B that I've been talking about. There's other information about the other options, but this is one that can solve that problem. Okay. Another issue that comes up is, what about deputies, and for example, can the clerk, the deputy clerk, also serve as the deputy treasurer? There's nothing in statute that clearly says one way or the other. If we look at it from the standpoint of incompatible offices, like just like the clerk cannot hold the treasurer position, except if the voters have allowed that, okay, by another option. Well, a deputy clerk wouldn't be able to serve as the deputy treasurer on the same matter. So they couldn't go to the meeting, take the minutes, approve checks as the clerk or acknowledge that the board took the action, and then go serve as the deputy treasurer to pay them out. Because the point of the separation was to provide some protection and internal control. Okay, so while the law isn't clear, isn't explicit, the best practice is not to share deputies. Try not to share deputies. If you absolutely cannot find someone else to serve as the deputy treasurer, you have a deputy clerk, okay, you could maybe have the deputy clerk appointed as the deputy treasurer, but you have to make sure there's always two people here, because your voters haven't separate or combined those positions into one. Okay, so be very cautious with trying to share deputies. It's a short-term solution. If you absolutely have to do it, again, use a neighboring clerk, a neighboring treasurer, or supervisor as a deputy. If it doesn't call for a lot of time, they're more likely to say, yes, I'll step in and help you if you get into a bad position, because it's short-term, right? But obviously try to plan for that in advance. And we do see those issues where a supervisor's out of town and another supervisor is ill and cannot make the meeting, and then they can't sign the checks, and or something comes up and it does cause problems. So you do want to have backups in all those situations. Let's see. There's some questions here. Let me see. Are there any auditors that can do audits for townships? Yes. And Lori actually sent me a link not too long ago about, I think it was to the auditors, like the auditors per trade group, that, and there's a subset of them who will do government audits. You can always use the state auditor, and of course they charge, and they have experience in doing government audits. So it's certainly an option, but you're not required to use them. Diane, if you send me an email, I'll try to find the link and send that out to you, or we'll get Lori back and we'll have her help out on that one. There you go, Clifton Larson Allen, CL. I think that's who we're using now ourselves. That's one of the big auditing companies. So you can certainly use the big auditors. You can use others too. So a lot of options. What are the rules to vacate a supervisor seat? Not really much of any rules. When you do a resignation, there's a statute that talks about providing written notice of the resignation. So a person who's going to resign, you should ask them to give you something in writing saying that they resign and the effective date of the resignation. After that, the remaining supervisors receive it and accept it formally. The reason you do this is if someone, supervisor A is in the seat and they say, I'm going to resign. Well, if it hasn't been accepted by the board, supervisor A can rescind the resignation. And maybe that's good. Maybe you don't want that person to go and it all works out. But sometimes they're resigning out of conflict and you think, no, I think it'd be better if, they've made this choice and we want to accept it. Or just you want to make it very clear when the term ends. Even in the best of circumstances, somebody's relocating outside the township. Of course, once you move, you're not a resident. You can't be a supervisor. You can't be in an elected position anymore. So they should be asked to give it in writing, be very brief, could be an email, that qualifies, and give when the effective date of it is. Then the board accepts it. Once the person has vacated and they're gone, well, now we have a vacancy, right? And you can go through that same procedure I mentioned before, where the board serves as the appointment committee. When it's a supervisor, though, your clerk gets a vote. The clerk is the only time ever that the clerk gets a vote. The clerk is never, ever a tiebreaker. The treasurer, never, ever a tiebreaker. In this circumstance, the clerk votes and is not a tiebreaker. The clerk gets a vote right at the beginning with the other supervisors to vote to appoint someone new into that supervisor seat. So clerks don't vote unless you have this situation, and then vote right along with the supervisors. You're not there to sit back and wait for a tie either. Okay, any questions about that material, about the clerk treasurer issues? Okay, can a neighboring townships who both have their administrative structure properly set up to appoint part-time clerk, share a clerk, or just create a conflict? They can share clerks, and we do have some clerks who work for multiple townships, several who work for two, maybe even one who works for three. That is fine. You do not have automatic conflicts of interest, and the clerk is not a decision maker in large part. They have what are called ministerial duties. So the law says do this and they have to go do it. They're not deciding something in the same way that the supervisors decide policy. The clerk doesn't decide policy. So except in maybe some very limited circumstances, I don't see how a clerk could have or could create a conflict of interest because they don't make decisions for either township. Their elections would be completely siloed. They have no interaction among the two elections. Nothing would be affecting one another on the ballot. So I don't see any issue with that, except a practicality issue of scheduling and where are you spending your time. So the first way to fill a vacancy is appointment, and only if the board cannot appoint, then it could go to a special election. Chris, you should never do a special election. There is a provision in there where voters can force a special election, but if you were in that situation, something has gone wrong. The expectation in 367.03 is that the board and the clerk shall appoint. So if there's a vacancy, this isn't a, well, if we want to appoint, no, you need to appoint, because otherwise someone can force a special election, which is expensive. And it is it's just a lot of mess. So yeah, no special elections, folks, no. And if you need that, give them my number. I will implore upon them, no special elections. This is not supposed to happen. It is supposed to be a streamlined process, and it's only a limited time. It's only until the next election. Chris, for example, if you, please do, yes, give them my number. That's what we're here for. If you have March elections, this person's going to be in office for 4 months. So what's the difference, really? I mean, we're going to spend thousands of dollars to hold a special election for a township for 4 months of time. By the time you do the notices, we're going to be right up to March anyway. And even if you were to do out to the next November election, still 2 years, it's an appointment, and that's one supervisor. So yeah, and Nancy, for a November election, yeah, if you have a resignation or vacancy right now, that person's sitting 2 years out. I'm assuming you just had an election, and then that next person would be on the next November ballot, and that's fine. It is supposed to work that way. So, all right, the other issue, the other topic that I want to comment on is some years ago, we started this whole deal as a response to the pandemic, because things were changing really daily in some cases and weekly. And we did this thing every week for a while, and then we scaled it back to every 2 weeks. Well, this is still in that vein of a response to pandemic and part of what we talk about here. So we're where some townships are still using pandemic provisions to do their meetings. And the townships, as far as I know, are kind of the last governments that are doing that. That's not bad in and of itself, but we still got to make sure we're following the statute. And I want you to be aware of kind of the prevailing view out there. So right now, medical professionals and health agencies that I can find still refer to it as a pandemic. Okay. I look at Minnesota Department of Health, CDC, WHO, and you can get granular data about your county. Okay, you can go on some of these places and get very localized data about infection rates and trends and all of this. And I point that out because if you're going to use the pandemic procedures, you need to document what's going on. You need to have those statements from somebody other than us, right? Because we're not medical professionals. We don't deal in public health. That's a different world. That's an expertise. So if you're going to continue using it, please go look for those things, find those things, document them. And each month, I think at this point, you need to make the decision if you're going to continue using those provisions. And I think you need the plan for how you're going to transition, even if the transition is to using the other method of remote meetings, because remember, there's two. That's a safer legal option at this point. Among most municipal attorney, well, as far as I know, just about every municipal attorney, they've kind of said the pandemic provisions are done and out. I don't read the statute quite that way. It says if there's still a pandemic, which again, we're referring back to public health agencies on that, and there's the feeling that it's needed for the health and safety, then it's in the discretion of the town board. And there's all kinds of safeguards to let people participate and get online and all that stuff. So I think it's still there if you can find the data to support it. But I think as a goal, I'd aim for within the next couple months, folks transition to the other remote meeting option. The other remote meeting option is, if the board agrees to it, there needs to be someone in the town hall location or the location of the regular meeting, and they can have supervisors participate from remote locations. So those who are of sensitive health condition, they may participate from home or something like that. The downside to this is that each location from which a supervisor is participating has to be listed on the meeting notice, and each place is treated as an open meeting location. So if you want to do this, and you have a sensitive health need, you could say, I'm going to participate from home. Now your home address and everything is going to be on that meeting notice. And it would be expected that that's open to the public if somebody wants to show up and participate in the meeting there. And that probably undermines the reason you did it in the first place. And that is frustrating. It's difficult, but that's what this statute requires. In practice, I don't know how often a member of the public just shows up at someone's home to participate in a public meeting. And remember, a supervisor can always decide, I'm not participating any further, and log off. And it wouldn't be ideal, but not participate from that meeting location. Okay, and at that point, now that meeting location is effectively closed, and they wouldn't let someone into their home because bottom line, you have to protect your health and not worry about the open meeting law when it comes to your health, in my humble opinion here. So I try to balance those things, consider the option of the second remote meeting method and how you're going to transition to that, because that is coming unless there's a big change in health in the next couple months, which as we come into winter, who knows, there might be. So that's where we are with that. Please do some inquiry on your area and what's going on in your area if you're going to use the pandemic provision. So question 2, clarify, every meeting notice needs to list locations of supervisors who don't attend in person. Yeah, Jane, so the statute here is 13D.02, and it provides the options for remote meetings. This is not the pandemic setting, right? This is the just general remote meetings. And any supervisor who's not going to be there in person, list their location on the meeting notice, and then people are expected to be able to attend from that location. So it does not include clerks, no. The only people it includes are the voting members, the supervisors, clerks, treasurers. You're free of this. If they agree to have you participate remotely from wherever you like, and you do not have to allow the public into that location. It is only the supervisors because the open meeting law applies to them. Something else I was thinking about on this. Oh, there's a couple possible opportunities within that section for I think up to 3 times a year, certain people do not have to allow the public into their location, but those are like, you're in the military deployed in a place where you cannot allow the public in, or you are, you have a health related emergency documented with a doctor that says you can't be around other people. And again, it's only available 3 times a year. So I'm sorry, the statutes do not really accommodate very well for this thing. And we did fight and change the statute 2 years ago, I want to say it was, might have been in the last session, to clarify, but it was really the newspaper lobby who pushed to kind of get away from these because some of them don't like these remote meetings. And so that's what we're left with today. We have a lot more residents attend meetings now than we are doing Zoom, so it'd be nice to continue this process for board meetings. Nancy, you're not alone. A lot of locations are finding that it's more convenient and that folks like it. So this is something really kind of torn, person to person, what they like, what they prefer. And some people just do not work well by remote means, or they prefer in person or vice versa. So, but I think your comment is right on, that this is just as much more of a service of convenience, at least for those who have broadband availability and they can attend from their home. So, all right, well, that is all I have, I think. Oh, there was one other question. I'm sorry. Somebody had a question for me. I don't know what it is. I'm going to have to get it in the next Town Tuesday. Sorry, folks.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. I just have one more thing I just remembered I wanted to talk about too, was our Township Day at the Capitol. It was the former LNR that we've had in the past, but we are going to have our Township Day at the Capitol. We've changed it up a bit. It's not going to be like the normal LNR that you're used to. This is going to be open up to everybody. We're trying to encourage everyone to come, because this impacts all of you. And so we want to have a huge impact at the Capitol and just have township officers everywhere talking to their legislators and speaking about what our legislative agenda is. So February 1st and 2nd, it should be on our website now. I think it's just basic information as far as when it is and that type of thing, but we'll have additional things going up. And of course, we'll do a constant contact. And for those of you who have email, you can see it that way. And so you can register and get yourself prepared for that. So talk to your fellow officers and let them know, encourage everyone to come, because that's what I'm doing. And we'd love to see you all there. And that's all I have for the remainder of this. Lori is currently in a training session here at St. Michael office, so she will not be attending our Township Tuesday here today. But any other questions that you might have? And feel free to unmute if you like, or write in the chat is fine. Not seeing any. Oh, there I see a hand up. Mary?
This is Mary Milbrass, Belgrade Township.
Yes.
I had sent you an email about the OSHA requirement for tree trimming.
I just found it, actually. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Mary. That
Okay.
was the third one. So this is related to OSHA requirements and basically chainsaws. And I wrote a column about it in the Township Insider 2 issues ago, I want to say. And it was a surprise, I think, to everybody how much this is regulated, although maybe it shouldn't be with how the dangers that are inherent in it. We've been talking about this, and the trainings that are available aren't really set up for the size that we have. So I think Jeff and I are going to work on whether that group or other groups can come in and do a training, and probably be at one of our bigger events or something like that. And we don't know if this training can be offered in any remote setting, or if this is a hands-on kind of training. If it's remote, or the parts of it that are remote, we should be able to accommodate through our the upcoming Matt U online version. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you. This is one of those, the federal government, OSHA, and this is through the state, Minnesota OSHA imposes this requirement of training, but they don't offer the training. So we're having to find private places to do it. It doesn't change the expectation. And then is there any possibility we can offer group insurance to the full-time township employees? There is no possibility that Matt can offer insurance. It is prohibited by federal law. There may be other options that other groups can do. Benefica, I think, is one that some townships use. That's a third party. It's not affiliated with Matt. I know that they come to some of our events, and they do offer insurance products for township officers. And then they're just an employer, right? So any insurer can offer you something on that This idea, though, is a good idea, and it's one that we've heard before. So that's more, that's to, I suppose, Jeff and the board, if they want to pursue something in an alternative means. I see Reno's hand is up.
Thank you.
Yeah, in reference to the benefits and that for township employees, Steve, that was a question that came up in my district. And so I did some follow-up with Heather's assistants. And you're correct, Minnesota Benefit Association, not that we're recommending them or we're endorsing them, but that was one entity that I did find that would be willing to take a look at that for townships. And if anybody wants to follow up on that, if you were to send an email to me, I'd be more than happy to send the individual's name to you and his contact information.
Perfect. Thanks, Reno. Appreciate that. I want to interject too on the chainsaw issue. I did actually speak with some of our partners last week. I had a meeting with them, LTAP and LRB and so forth. But so there are options for us. I was able to get the question answered whether or not we could do this by virtual, and I would think there have to be some type of hands-on. I know I equated this to like the concealed carry. In Wisconsin, you don't have to actually shoot a gun to have a concealed carry. You just have to pass a test, which is all virtual. In Minnesota, you have to actually have hands-on training besides taking the virtual test. So I would equate this, if you're going to use a chainsaw, it's dangerous. You should have some hands-on training with that. But that, so we are still trying to find that out. It might actually be a hybrid where you can do still the classroom on, and this was talked about last week. You can do the classroom portion of it virtually, but then you'll still have a hands-on portion that you'd have to pass. So we're still trying to, get together, like I said, with our partners. And I think Mary, you sent me an email on that you had looked at some training. It was like $1,800 or something like that. Just a crazy dollar amount. And this would not be even near that. So you can rest assured that would be okay, but we will get information out to you as soon as we can. See, what is the state statute states that the term begins the first Monday in January. They all thought, well, they're talking about the oath. Steve, did you touch on that already? Apologize if I missed it.
I didn't see that one. No. Chris added in there, oath is set. So the term is set when you have November elections. The term is not set in March elections. So here, the term, it doesn't actually end, I should say, but the oath can be taken on January 2nd. So the contest period ends, and then the clerks issue the certificate of election. So you should try to do that promptly on the 2nd or shortly after the 2nd. And then I saw Diane has her hand up too.
I just got a couple of things. We applied for a FEMA grant this year because we had enough damage on our roads. Never done that before. I don't think we'll ever do it again. It was crazy. It was so much intense. Could we legislate somehow that if you're requesting less than $50,000, you don't need to jump through all those hoops? I mean, yes, you need to have pictures, you need to have places, but I can't believe the time we spent on it. And then because it was only $30,000, we only get 5% of that for administrative fees. I think I'd have spent as much time asking for $200,000 and then I'd have gotten more in administrative fees because we don't even cover the administrative fees on that. So what is Matt's impression with FEMA? Is it something townships should look at, or is it way too much paperwork?
Do you want my honest answer, or you just want?
Yeah, I want your honest answer.
Excuse me. FEMA is a pain in the butt, and unfortunately, it is a federal program, which we cannot do anything about that at the state legislature. I actually did sit down with Tina Smith last week at the Transportation Alliance meeting. I didn't have a whole lot of time with her, but she sits on a transportation committee in the Senate. And she's been a strong advocate for us. But I did ask her about grants, not FEMA in specifically, but just grants in general. So any grant that you get from the federal government comes with hoops. They had made an exception for ARPA, and that you didn't have to go according to all the federal guidelines that typically go with all federal dollars. But unfortunately, every other grant that's out there, and there are a lot of them, if you're willing to go through that paperwork and look at the minutia of documents that you have to go through in order to do it, and you found that out, Diane, with FEMA, God bless you, and you can get some dollars, but whether or not it's worth it, currently, I think you have to have some damage. You have to have a lot of damage in order for that to really make it worth your while. And it's going to be different for every township. And some townships actually have staff, or maybe their person who would be in charge of that is retired and has spare time that they can put towards that. But I think the vast majority of us, just the way the structure of our townships like us in Newmarket, we don't have staff. We have our 75-year-old clerk and our treasurer has a full-time job, and we just don't have the ability, the capacity to do those kind of things. But I did talk with her, and she suggested I contact her office, and I will, about starting, figuring out how we can make the regulations less than what they currently are. How that would look, who knows? Because again, they have to do it for the whole country. And I think what really ties our hands for being townships in Minnesota, we're a unique breed of townships. We're not like the townships on the East Coast, in Pennsylvania, in New York, even Ohio, and so forth. Those are large townships. Excuse me, my phone keeps going nuts. Those are large townships, and they can be 200,000-300,000 people. Our largest township here in Minnesota is 11,000 people. It's just way different. And unfortunately, when they take a view of townships, that's what they're seeing. And so we need to somehow, whether we have another classification for our kind of township structure or not, I don't know how that's going to look. But there has to be something. That's what I did approach her with last week. Like I said, it wasn't just FEMA specific, but all grants, so that we can participate more and get more dollars into the township in the rural areas. And so I'll be keeping you guys apprised as to what develops from that. As you know, it's federal government, nothing moves fast. State government's slower, but federal government's slower. But we are addressing it and trying to see what we can do with our legislative constituency or our advocacy on that level. But this is also where you guys come into play. And I mentioned that at the beginning of our meeting here. I need you guys to talk to your legislators too. They can hear from myself and Steve and Shep, our contracted guy, all day long, or even on the national level, our NATAT. And that's great. But when they start hearing from the grassroots and hearing from you guys, you are their direct constituents. That matters. That rings better with them rather than just, I mean, it's important for them to hear from us. But when it's affirmed by you guys and who are boots on the ground on the front lines for this, that rings a big bell with them. And I can't stress enough how important it is for you guys to get involved. Don't be shy. They want to talk to you. Every time I talk to legislators, state or federal, it's always brought up that they want to hear from our officers. So it's not a hollow gesture. They do want to talk to you. So I urge you to take them up on that.
Well, the amazing thing was, so we had our first Zoom meeting. They couldn't come out. They had Zoom meeting. They had 5 representatives from FEMA and 2 from our township. How much were those 5 representatives getting paid on our tax dollar? It's like, I didn't need that many. We didn't have that much of expense, so that's the frustrating part too, is my tax dollar being spent on 5 people listening in on this meeting that never visited us, that never did anything. So it's a frustrating thing. FEMA is a waste of our tax dollar in some ways.
Well, they do a lot of good as far as, when there are disasters that occur. I mean, yes, they can be frustratingly slow as we don't always agree with everything that they're doing, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some good aspects of what FEMA does for us. And I think it's important to note that. Can it be improved? Sure. Everything, whether state or federal government, can always be improved. And but I would hate to take just that extreme view of they're just a waste of our tax dollars. And let's just work on the things that we can work on and improve it and make it better for us. So they're more effective, more impactful. Mary, did you have your hand up?
I did. I went through FEMA twice, and had good results from our first episode. The second one, it was $280,000 that was submitted. We had flooding and a lot of the banks washing out, roads washing out. Well, submitted everything, got it all filed with this one contact person I had. COVID hit, she left the scene. After that, I had 7 other people that took her place. So I just get all the paperwork filled out and somebody new would come in and say, I don't use that format, use my format 7 times. But at that point, after the third one, I thought, no way am I giving up on this now. And as a result, submitted 284,000, got back 275,000.
Good for you.
So it's due diligence, stick to it and play the game. That's about it.
Thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate
Sure.
that. Wow. So what time frame, how long did that take you, Mary?
Oh, so 2019, I believe, was the incident in March. And we got the last check in 21.
Okay. But from the incident to getting that first check, that first bit of help, how long did that take?
They divided it up. So it actually, I can't think of the rep's name. He was from the metro area. He came out and said, we're getting this done immediately in that part of it. So we got like, I don't know, 5 or 6 checks. They broke it all out in sections.
Awesome.
So the first one was like maybe 9 months. And then after that, it was lingering.
Okay. Okay. Well, congrats on sticking to it. I definitely
you.
applaud you for that. That's awesome. Anything else? Or Heather, do you have anything? I see that you're on the line here too.
I had not prepared anything, no.
No problem. No problem.
To the
so-
extent that anyone here has not received their workers' compensation invoices, let me know. Those went out the first of the month and they should all be delivered. We did have a few insurance or address issues. So if you haven't received it, let me know and I will make sure to get that out to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. For those of you who may not know, Heather Tidmore is in charge of Medit, our insurance trust. And she has been here for a long time, but I know with a lot of officers that we have, we don't know who we all introduce her to. So yeah, any question that you have about that, always contact Heather. I should be more than happy to help you out with that. But any other questions for any of us?
Jeff, I was just gonna let everyone know a little bit quick about
We
in
do
regards to
have something
FEMA.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Go for it.
Sorry, I was on a little late. My kids were a little uncooperative this morning, so
No problem.
quiet. Shush. Anyways, I was gonna say that our townships are starting to get their UEI numbers. So yay.
Good, good.
I know a lot of them have, it's been frustrating. So we're getting through. I'm getting more and more emails and calls every day to assist others with their registration. And so we've kind of figured it out now. And then there has been some questions about whether or not to complete the registration. And I do want to let them know, I have all the answers. I'm going to put together just a quick 1-page thing about how to complete the instructions for the registration.
Awesome.
After they get their UEI. So I do recommend all townships to complete their registration with sam.gov. I haven't gotten a response back from Sam yet on whether or not you don't complete it, what happens. I've gotten one response from a township that said they got an email if they didn't complete it within the next, I think it was few months, the registration was going to be deleted. Now, I don't know if that registration deletion means anything will happen to their UEI number. So just to be safe, I would recommend all townships to complete the registration. Like I said, I do have all the answers. I've gone through it now about a half a dozen times with a few townships and they've all been completed. So no issues on that end. But yeah, just keep reaching out to me, and I apologize if it's taking me a while to get back to some townships because I am really inundated, and it's hard to keep up, but I'm getting there. So just be patient, and I know it's frustrating, and I'm so sorry that they have to go through this, but hopefully this will be the last time we have to deal with it in this manner. Next year should be better. So
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate that. Yeah, Nicole's been working hard at helping as many townships as she can with all those issues. Federal government again changed the rules on us and took away support from SAM.gov, and so it has been. We're not the only state. I've been hearing from Michigan, from Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They're all in on this mess, and we're trying to work it from the federal standard or federal level to try and get them to revert back to what it was or help us in some fashion. And maybe eliminate SAM.gov would be job one. So we'll see what we can do with that. But thanks, Nicole. I appreciate that. Anything else from anybody? Don't see any hands. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate that. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yes.